Boom. Recording. Liz Plank, what's up?
Hello, Christopher.
Hi, we were just talking about how terrible the American healthcare system is.
Yep, yep. We could go on. I mean, this could be its own podcast. Just how
It
many
probably is. It probably is.
there probably is. I hope someone is making
Yeah.
a whole podcast about it, and I hope it changes something. Which I'm not. I'm not hopeful it will. But yeah, some days I'm just very happy I'm Canadian, and it's mostly on a day where I you know, happen to get a bill for a medical procedure I never even remember that I got or that is supposed to be covered by my insurance and, just is not, of course.
My favorite tweet I think of all time is like GoFundMe, the backbone of the American healthcare system since 2016.
Oh, fucked up.
So fucked up.
It's so fucked up. Like, and it just like justifies racism, sexism. Like it's actually just embedded, even just with that, right? Like with a healthcare policy that's non-existent, really, that says it's up to you, which is like the cruelest, like the only the most barbaric kind of right like regimes that's their baseline or that's how they operate and of course it sort of like legitimizes all forms of discrimination in a way where like I mean it creates them and exacerbates them, that's for sure. But yeah, it's ruthless.
Liz, I'm gonna go backwards. I know who you are. Many of us know
Yeah.
who you are. Who are you? Just say hi.
Who am I? I'm Liz. I am a journalist. I just realized my door's not closed, and I have like a roommate, and it's not very nice. Um, I'm gonna
Are they
keep
not
my
very nice, or it's not
no,
very
she's
nice?
super nice, and it wouldn't be nice for me to just be like talking full volume. So yeah, I'm Liz. I'm a journalist. I have ADHD, as you can tell. No, I cover women's rights, gender, themes related to gender. I wrote a book called For the Love of Men, that's all about masculinity. I do a podcast called Man Enough, which is how we met, because you were such a great guest that we needed to have you come back as a host. And I do another podcast called Synced on the Armchair Umbrella. I have a Substack called Airplane Mode, where I write a lot of solution-based journalism. I do a lot of making a documentary about disability rights. As I like to say, I do a lot of things that don't pay a lot of money, but I do a lot of them. So it adds up. Being a journalist in 2024, you just gotta.
You make enough nickels, you'll be rich eventually.
There you go. Yeah, if you work 24/7, no, I mean, I'm actually one of the, lucky ones. I'm sure we won't get into, the state of the media industry, but I know that like I have friends, every week I feel like I have a friend that's laid off.
Oh, it's
And just
terrible
yeah,
in every
journalism.
in every
Yeah.
field.
Every field, it's 100% across the board. I think it's very scary. It's such a weird time to be like our age,
Alive?
Yeah, alive and like, yeah. Anyway, we can go into I don't know. I don't even know what you want me to talk about, but I'm
Well, I have
guessing.
a I have a starting based question that I
Okay,
ask everyone, and I feel like I need to ask it now, but I'm gonna hold off and just say, what is solution-based journalism
good
versus
question.
the opposite?
I mean, solution-based journalism to me is a compassionate form of journalism. Like I think that journalism, um, that there's a lot of function to it. There's a lot of reasons why people do it. I think it's obviously about holding powerful people accountable. It's about truth. It's about quote unquote objectivity, if that even kind of exists. But to me, like what always felt weird about being a journalist or just operating in that industry was that like how people felt after they read our stories, what they did after they read our stories never went into the equation. How many people clicked on the story went into the equation, right? Like how much we could advertise, based on those numbers was part of the equation. But I just was always very, yeah, from a sort of early point, even when I was kind of just still like a blogger, I would always try and make sure that I was leaving people feeling either better about the world or better about themselves and their ability to change the world. So there's just a way to frame stories in a way that, like, if it bleeds, it leads, right? Like this sort of, sort of phrase in journalism that, the worst stories are going to do the best. I don't believe in that. I don't believe we have to make people scared or angry in order to, in order to sell papers. I think that there's a different way, and so that's what I try and do with my approach to journalism.
Who is doing it like you? Anyone you want to shout out?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that there are so many people who are doing an incredible job. Karen Atia.
Maybe I'm thinking institutions, maybe not.
Oh,
just
institutions.
like...
Yeah. Actually not a lot of look, I'll shout out Vox, which is where the last media company I worked at. I think Vox was is an incredible, I think one of the very few digital media spaces that's left, really. And I always tell Jim Bankoff, the CEO, I'm like, you're the only male CEO that I really, really like. like I truly 100% have no notes. I think you can sort of tell. No, but a lot of these media companies, like, people who were heading Vice, who were heading these, BuzzFeed, like it wasn't, not to, again, go after anyone in particular, but like it was a lot of very overconfident, arrogant white men who, rode this bubble, and they're fine, but the employees who really created, the product that allow them to really get rich, are unemployed now, or, unable to find work. So, I think Vox actually does a really good job. And then there's a whole institute that is devoted, like a solution-based institute, which does an amazing job at training journalists or training just regular folks on how to do it.
Train the regular folk.
Yeah.
Okay, now the question I start for everyone is, what is liberation?
Oh, I think liberation is I think of liberation not just as well, first of all, the opposite of liberation, I think, would be coercion, right? And I think coercion, when we think about coercion, we often think of being told what not to do. We're being told you can't do this, but it's also being told what you can't do, right? And part of what allows liberation to happen is civil disobedience and doing things that we're not supposed to do, right? That's how you kind of create movements. That's how every sort of civil rights and sort of liberation movement really started. It's by regular people not doing what the institutions tell them to. Not just not doing it, but not respecting the institutions. I think that we sort of forget. I mean, Gloria Steinem talks about this in regards to abortion, of just we give the Supreme Court the legitimacy that it has. I think people don't realize that, even though
it's a fallacy.
Yes, and that it's all of us as individuals who make, we pay for their salaries, and we are the ones who give them legitimacy. And so if we don't think that they're legitimate, that is, that puts a real stake in, sort of that creates a real problem for them. So, I think disobedience is something, I don't know, that I've been thinking a lot about. And to me, that's what liberation is.
Makes me think of, do you know the Lysistrata?
No, what's that?
So Lysistrata is a famous, very old Greek play, where the women of the village, of the area, the town, the village, whatever, the city, want to stop the war. They're tired of losing their sons in war.
Yeah, right.
And so all of the women make a pact to stop sleeping with the men. This is ancient Greek shit.
So
and
smart.
It is violent, and first it starts, men are violent. They're there's a backlash, and it's this whole journey that takes place, and I think it's really just sort of a commentary on wow, what if we did what you said? What if we stopped paying their paychecks?
Yeah.
What if we realize that it is our bodies they're literally feeding off of, our effort, our energy, our mind, our dollars.
Yeah. I mean, that's what women did too in the 1970s in Iceland, right? Like this like general strike that women did, that was very effective. Iceland is viewed as this like, feminist utopia, which, you can poke holes in for sure, but like it certainly does have, there's a lot of markers on which it does, perform higher than other countries. And yeah, the part of why they got there is that women were just like, oh, you're not going to respect us. You're not going to pay us like the same. We're just not going to show up. Like we are more than half the population. Yeah, like
I didn't know
get your
this. Wow.
subways to run. Yeah, it was like one of the greatest, acts of kind of right again, like one of the biggest strikes, like mass strikes that ever happened in history. And look at what it gave them. I mean, I feel this way, like Chris, like I feel constantly, and I'm sure there's a feeling a lot of people, can relate to of like, I'm just like, why aren't we in the streets all the time? Like during COVID,
Mm.
during George Floyd and
Oh,
Black Lives Matter, like that was like the most normal moment of maybe like my life. Like I was like,
mm.
this, even though it was so dystopian, so nuts, like, but it was like a very, a sort of a time capsule in time, right? Where a lot of people, except for essential workers, obviously had more time on their hands. They were all paying attention to what was happening. And so many people were out in the streets day in and day out. And that felt normal. Like that's what it should be based on everything that's happening in the world right now. And I think I don't know about you, but I just look around and I mean, a lot of people sort of talk about this feeling of needing to just go to your next meeting, and just pay your taxes and do these small little, kind of futile things throughout your day while there's just like a very big mass, sort of happening worldwide. I think it's very hard to be able to make sense of that and also hold, I don't know, both truths, right? Like I do have to go to my next meeting and I do have to pay for my rent and work my job but it feels like we should all just be out in the streets.
I think that all right. So what is the feeling of out on the streets is what? Like if you were to encapsulate what you're saying, so like a bunch of people out on the streets, what is that feeling? Like what is that?
I mean, it's like, I don't know, I come from Quebec and Quebec is known for its kind of big student movements. There's definitely also it's more leftist. It's definitely more. I mean, not all parts of Quebec, and there's definitely some like white nationalists and a rise of that happening. But overall, it's just it has a more sort of grassroots feel to it. Part of it is that we were like an oppressed minority within Canada, just as French speakers. And so there's that, sort of resistance, like, sort of theme, right? That's sort of in our blood. And so, in 2003, I was in, what we call CEGEP, which is like between high school and university. And we just all went on like they made a change to student loan. They like turned basically student grants into student loans, like a huge amount, like I remember the number, it was $103 million, like that was supposed to go to grants that then they were like, now it's a loan. And we just all stopped going to school. Like every school in Quebec was on strike for months, like not just days, like months. Like that summer I ended school in like the middle of July or something because they were like, now you have to go back to school and do all of your classes. But we didn't care. Like I remember like my parents had planned this vacation and I was like, I'm not coming. Like I can't. Like it was so to me the feeling in the streets was that like every day we were out striking. Every 3 days we would do general assemblies where we would decide are we staying on strike or not. And it was almost like a lifestyle. Like it just was like every day, where were we going? What were we doing? And what were we fighting for? And there was a real sense of being a group, right? Like I didn't feel like an individual during those few months. I felt like I was part of a collective, and I felt like I was a part of something, and that what I did mattered, because we were doing it as a group.
It's community.
Literally, right?
Community.
Yeah.
I was just talking about the tribe of self. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we are tribal people, but now the only tribe we praise is the tribe of self.
Yeah.
And so
When
we
did
do
that
things.
happen? Like,
When did it happen?
wh-
Oh, I mean, capitalism.
yeah,
That's when it happened. Like, when the dollar equated your worth in this
yeah.
world, I think was one huge part. Then you add race. We attach worth to race. What is Howard Zinn? He says the worst trick whiteness ever pulled was to convince someone it was better to be poor and white than poor and black. So then we attach the dollar to a
Mm-hmm.
person, like,
Uh,
um, and then I think one of the great third ones was uh social media.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, like, you literally have a worth attached to you. Like,
A number.
we say you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
followers, like you a messiah, like like a messiah for good or a messiah for bad.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think this, you know,
Mm,
you have this, and so you are a tribe of self.
right.
And what you were saying is, like, we were not tribe of self, we were tribe of community, because
Yeah.
we had been so shaken out of paying taxes or even paying your bills back, because everything was on pause. Fuck, paying your rent was on pause. Like,
Yes, you're right.
your life was, all of those delusions
Yeah.
got shook up, and so you got to care about other people and express
Mm-hmm.
that care. uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that does feel good, and I don't know that a lot of people have something larger than them to
Yeah.
care about,
Yeah.
to march for. Like, what can we
Yeah.
march for in our own lives, in our small communities?
Yeah.
Like, that metaphor of marching is really beautiful. Just like, how can we walk out?
Yeah. And feel like it matters, you know? I think that that's what people are sort of feeling right now, that it's I mean, I think we're seeing really cool examples of it with Palestine and uncommitted voters, for example, right? They're literally yeah, they're not marching necessarily. I mean, there are obviously plenty of pro-Palestine marches, and that's its own movement. But and disturbing events like the Oscars and um, State of the Union, right? But I think even like the uncommitted voters has been a really surprising also movement that's been extremely effective. Again, in saying we're not going to vote for you. Not only are we're not going to do this big, we're actually not going to do something that you are telling us we're supposed to do. And I think that's in addition to everything else going on, that is making the Biden administration like shaking their boots. And I think that's behind some of these, recent sort of statements, which are not enough, but I think could get to a point where yeah, they realize that there are consequences to sort of what they're doing, and that unfortunately the one thing they'll pay attention to is um, losing their power, right? That it's but yeah, I think that I'm very inspired by how like smart movements are, and sort of going beyond yeah, the sort of traditional ways of organizing that we've seen, and I think it's heartening for me to see just how many people are yeah, just like joining and sort of participating in these movements and the effects that it's having.
Do you have advice for anyone who's like, I don't know, wanting to march for something,
Hmm.
wanting to walk out, or wanting to find something to sort of care about in that way, or
Yeah.
give their time to?
Yeah. I mean, I think that um, I had this interview with Naomi Klein, and she's yeah, a brilliant author on a lot of you know the gamut of all of today's issues, from Palestine to feminism to disability rights. And one thing that she told me was, she was like, everyone, because of this, and she's written a lot about individualism and sort of the rise of it and how it impacts all of these things. And one thing that she told me was, often people say, but what can I do? What can I do? And she's like, that's actually not the right question. It's like, what can we collectively do, right? And she uses this term called unselfing, which is, I'm gonna forget who originally coined it, but it's a British Irish, I think, philosopher. And it's this idea of, yeah, losing the self, right? That you're not acting from that position of the individual of like, what can I, Liz Plank, do to make a difference in the world? It's like, oh, who can I join? Who can I, what can I be part of? And there are so many, yeah. Okay, so there might be a pause in this because we had a gas leak this morning. And so I might, oh, my.
Are you gonna pass out? Do you have gas?
I mean, it was kind of a crazy morning because my roommate woke up at 5 a.m. and she was from a smell. Like, I don't know if you've ever woken up from a smell. And then she tried to call me and everything. I was knocked out, so I didn't, see it. But then all morning she was like pacing around. She was like, thought there was a gas leak. And then, but it like, I think we think it was a skunk.
Got him.
And yeah, but then once the gas guy came, he looked around and he was like, actually, there is this leak that like I discovered that. So anyway, now anyway, it's been a morning. So sorry about that.
It's okay. We were just at
So,
this leaving
unsolving.
self and going to us.
Which I feel like
think
you're really good at. You're such a, I mean, that's what I feel you help people do. I mean, one of the many things that you help people do, right? Like through meditation and through sort of mindfulness, sort of techniques. I think that you help people. You help people. I think you have a very spiritual approach to activism.
Yeah, I mean, I think liberation. I call this podcast and this whole Substack engaged liberation, because I don't think liberation is about getting out of the world, but getting into the world more fully,
right,
more deeply, with more intimacy. Like, liberation isn't like I get free. It's got to be we get free. Like, you're not liberated if you're still thinking like, I'm gonna get away from all this.
Mm-hmm.
You're liberated when you start to see like, we have to get away from all this.
Totally. And isn't that way more fun too, right? It just makes,
I think it just raises the stakes, whether it's more fun or more. It's just like, now you have more people on your side. Like, I like the idea. I have a Dharma teacher who says like, to invest in other people's happiness as much as your own gives you 7 billion more chances to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're just raising the math. Like, he's like, it's just kind of like, you could be selfish about it. Like, if I care about someone else's happiness, I have more chances to be happy.
That's true. That's so true. Yeah, it's not taking away from you. But I even think the thing about it being more fun, like, is important. Like, I feel like the left, it's like we're not like, the right is so fun. Like, they throw such good fucking parties. Like, I covered the Trump campaign in 2016. I went on the trail in 2020. Like, I saw, like, it's a party. Like, yeah, it's a racist fucking party, and it's it's scary. Like, it's weird, but it's a fun weird party. And the left, it's like, sometimes I think we're so overconfident in our policies and in the fact that we're right, which, like, we are, but like, but like, if we're not throwing a party that's equally exciting, or that our ideas aren't equally exciting, I think that, like, what's the point? And I think that's a recruitment. I think we have to be not just interested in having the best ideas, but having the most people, be part of those ideas and be part of the movement that we're in. And sometimes I feel like there's a little bit of we're not like evangelists, in the way that I think the right is better at. In that way, I think they are more concerned with the collective, or with a collective kind of not unison. Well, they're more unison, right? Like, we're all sort of the same, which, again, the left is much more interested in difference, and I think that's a beautiful thing. But yeah, like, I want to see us have the best parties, so that activism isn't like homework, that it's something that you look forward to doing. and feel good while you're doing it.
I think in general, liberating ideas like this have never been right, or solution-based journalism has never been sexy or fun, or
Hmm.
righteousness or doing the right thing has never been
Yeah,
as sexy as doing the wrong thing. Like, I
totally,
think this is in
totally.
movies and media, in culture. Um, Somehow there's a side of the world that we have assumed is funner,
Hmm.
sexier, more dangerous.
Hmm.
So I guess one question is, when did that myth happen? And you
Hmm.
see it in journalism all the time. Is what you're talking about. Like they just got to get clicks.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
they got to get reads.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a like there's just two views of humanity, right? Like there's a view that's like um again rooted in this idea of like, well, humans are ruthless and individualist and they're selfish and they just want, they'll do anything to like that if you have the choice between winning or losing or winning for something for yourself or for the collective, you're going to always choose to advance yourself, right? And just to a certain extent, I think this really often presents itself in conversations around masculinity, right? That like there's sort of this idea that like patriarchy is natural, right? And that's just human nature, and men are just gonna, they're stronger, so they're gonna be violent because they can, or right, like they want to spread their seed, they don't have to give birth, so they're gonna, just be unfaithful, right, or whatever it is. So I think that, and then I think there's the other view that sees humans as naturally altruistic and naturally kind and empathetic, and you can find like biological proof like for either theory, right? I think that there's more proof for the latter, right? That we see even in children, right? In children who haven't necessarily, you would say that they're not fully socialized yet. They are, yeah, they have impulses to share,
Mm.
even though it means less for them, right? And there's actually, I'm forgetting her name, but there's a woman that's like devoted her entire career to researching, to proving that humans are naturally actually altruistic through research with children. And so, yeah, like there's a view of journalism that's like, yeah, the sort of Succession, like, if you watch Succession, like, people you just scare them and you divide them, and that's what works. And then there's, yeah, a sort of different view that's like, maybe you don't have to do that. Maybe people aren't that dumb, maybe people aren't that, and maybe like, let's not like go further into that, even if that's, let's say, a possibility for humanity. Shouldn't we be feeding the other wolf, instead? So yeah, I mean, when did that start? I think it's kind of as old as, I mean, I don't know. That's a good question. I certainly don't know the answer, but I feel like I've seen that debate a lot within gender, particularly. I mean, I was a women's studies major. Like, don't get how many fucking parties I went to where a guy being like, "Well, evolutionarily speaking, rape is natural," and like,
Stop.
and homosexuality is not. And I'm like, dude, what are you, like, it's just
Anyone
whenever.
who ever comes to me with like, we were monkeys, or
Yeah.
but I'm not a monkey, dog. Like,
Also, even the
so
monkey
different.
thing. Yes, half of our genetics come from chimpanzees, but the exact other half come from bonobos, and bonobos are fully matriarchal. So like, yeah, chimpanzees, it's like even these, PhD, like these fucking academics who come in and they have biases, they're seeing, animals through the lens of humans and what they want to see. And so yeah, even the monkey thing, even if it was true, like, okay, let's say we're just monkeys, like, well, your theory doesn't, that we're just meant to be patriarchal is actually false. Um, so yeah, I think it's like, what's the answer? I think it's probably a little bit of both. It's like, is it nature? Is it nurture? I think that everything is, um, I think that
I think it's
everything,
yes, and I think
yes,
that
totally.
is the
Yeah.
liberating model, is one of
Yeah.
like, it's not this
Yeah.
or that. It's
Right.
it's all of it. Like,
Hmm.
it's not you or him. It's both of it's all of the above.
Yeah.
and your sister
Totally.
and your brother and the person you don't know and the war going on. Like nothing is separate from your joy from your suffering. Like, um, but yeah, we do live in that, binary world, and it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to think more expansive. It's hard to think blob
Yeah.
versus
Yes.
like
Yeah.
form, fixed thing.
Yes. It's so weird to, well, it's also our brains are trying to simplify things, right? I think constantly. I've never researched like binary. I mean, I now I want to, but I've never done a deep dive on like binaries, but like, um, or like why they exist, right? But I think our brains are just trying to make quick stories, right? That's what our brain does all day because we're assaulted with information, just going down the street and just with our phones now, and so we're constantly, that's what also stereotypes are, and right, like we just create a story so that our brain can, so that we can survive, but yeah, these binaries I think also get us. I mean, it's when we believe in it, right? That like the sort of oversimplification, and sort of the stories that our brain makes subconsciously. And the problem is when we let that part, sort of run the reins.
That's all we do is create stories. We're just like
Yeah,
one giant story
it's
machine.
crazy. We love stories. I
None
mean,
of it's really real.
none of it's
Like,
real. It's like, do you ever, when you're in a relationship or you go through a breakup or something, and or even like a thing at work, and you're like, I know that the other person, like I am the victim here, 100%. Everyone in my life believes that this person is a villain. And I know that like in this person's world, I
yes,
know I am the villain.
yes.
And it's like, it's just, it's funny to me. Like, but we're so committed to our stories,
To ourselves, to our childhood
Yes,
stuff. Like
yes, yes,
I
yes.
I nerd
Yeah.
out a lot. I mean, I'll be at a coffee shop. I'll just, you be in Los Angeles and you're like,
Uh,
you're all the main character in your own movie.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
7 billion people in the world who think they're the lead of their movie.
yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
mind-blowing thing. Like, Liz,
yeah.
you're a co-star in so many movies. In some
Yeah,
movies,
I
you're
don't
just an
even know.
extra. Like, in some movies, you didn't even get cast.
Yeah. Yeah. Or again, I'm the worst. I'm
Yeah,
like
or yeah, you the
scum of
villain,
the earth.
yo.
Yeah, I'm the villain.
Like, it's
Oh
trick.
man. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's wild that everyone's self-importance is so important.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And I think when I think of liberation, really in the grand scheme, it's not even spiritual. It's like I think it's the healthiest way. It's not 7 billion movies. It's just one movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's one movie that currently is a little diseased. Like we're not
Mm-hmm.
in I don't know which part of the movie we're in, but it's definitely the darker. It's not the happier
Yeah.
days at the beginning of the romance.
I know. Dark night of the
War,
soul.
famine, all this. Like it's just one movie.
Yeah. 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 It's hard to believe, and it's hard to accept that we're like in the dark part and not know, what's
When
next or
it
how to
ends.
get out of
Yeah.
it or how it ends,
I think
and
it gets worse, Liz.
I think so too.
I do. I'm very confident in that.
I just at this point, I've been like, remember when we thought 2020 was like the worst? Like, I mean, obviously it was bad, but like how has it possibly become worse since then? I think I definitely didn't see. And I saw this headline, it was like 4 years ago, COVID, and I was like, what are you saying? 4 years ago? No, there's no way. COVID was 4 years ago. I don't know why that
Wild.
wrecked my brain. Like I just but like yeah. I mean I just try and like really be extra nice to myself when I and to others, as much as I can. But when I think about just what we've been through, and that yeah, it most certainly will sort of get worse. But just that we're just living in one of those unique times in history that like are going to be written about. It's just not one of those like 2005. Like no one's going to write about 2005. You know what I mean? Like nothing. It was great. Like nothing happened. Like Justin and Brittany broke up. Like right. Like I don't know. It's probably like the most traumatic thing that happened. And yeah, the last few years have been like, oh, this is, and I think it's like, yeah, remembering that it's normal, that it doesn't feel that like your life is a mess, you know. And if it's not a mess, like I hate you. No, you know, people who are like I had a friend, she was a DP, and like 2020 was like her best year, man. And she would just like, sometimes we'd be talking around the table and like comparing just like the horrible, and she'd be like, I made the most money I ever made in 2020. I was like, dude, you can't. Afterwards, I was like, I know I love you, but you can't actually say that out loud. Like, it's offensive.
She was like, I found a partner, I bought a house.
Yeah, no, she is doing great. She was in high demand, you know, and good for her. Good for her. Like, I genuinely, like, I'm happy for her. I just was like, that's a, you know, don't say that out. Don't say that to other people. Yeah, people will get mad.
Liz, are you gonna start a media company?
I don't know. I think I think Substack is a media company. Like, you know, I think I mean, you have a media company, right? Like, it's at this point, especially since publishers, you know, are becoming more and more extinct. I think we become kind of our own publishers. So I don't have the infrastructure to really call probably what I'm doing a media company, but in a way that's yeah, that's kind of what that's how I, you know, I have a publishing schedule. I'm you know, I'm that I don't respect, but I, you know, I try, I have like, I operate kind of like a media company, just without you know, all of the people, but that's my goal. Honestly, like, that's my goal, you know. I would love to get to more subscribers so that I can invest into the business and really, yeah, like, get help so that I can grow it, and then and bring voices like you as well, right? Like, I mean, you're coming on our sharing circle. Like, I view that again as like growing, you know, the potential of the community that we're building. I view it more as a community, I guess, than like a media, because I'm more focused on like creating this, filling the gaps, right, of what we're kind of talking about, of this hyper individualism and this feeling of being alone, and sort of countering it with, you know, with a yeah, with a real sense of like a of like-minded people who can gather and discuss, you know, ideas in the way that I guess we would have if this was 50 years ago, like in a basement, you know. But now that I don't know, it feels like those things don't happen. You know, those things now are happening over Zoom, or again, happening sort of online, which again, I think it's like a good thing. Like, right, like when I started becoming a journalist, like it was so cool to me. Like, I just, you know, I didn't even really want to become a journalist. I just realized that if I used social media, I could connect with so many people who didn't make me feel alone. You know, I think in 2013, I didn't feel that hyper individualism in the same way that we have it now, but it was this, but I felt like I was crazy a lot, and that like everyone else, you know, just in terms of my ability to connect with other feminists and to make things happen, it was amazing. Like, it was such a revolution. Like, and even the George Floyd protests, like, you know, that was obviously a huge resurgence of Black Lives Matter, but Black Lives Matter had started, you know, several years before that, and you know, that really laid the groundwork for a lot of things. So again, as much, and that's why it's so complicated, right? Because you're like, social media is so fucking evil. Like, it's so bad. It's you know, yeah, most of the time that I feel the worst about myself, it's because I've been on one of these platforms. But it's also where I've experienced also some of the most joy, you know, and impact, or seen the most impact in my life. So it's hard for,
How do you
like, I don't,
reconcile?
yeah,
How do you do it? I
yeah.
hate it.
I
Horrible.
think it's right. It's so weird for something to be so good yet so bad. It's almost like food in a way, right? Like, where we all need food, to survive. I mean, it's not really like food, but where food is good, right? But then you have all this food that's so bad and that's created to
I think it's
literally
like
make
a
us
relationship you
addicted.
can't leave, you know? It's like
Yes,
literally
exactly. Yes.
that's got great sex, but just
Yeah.
like it just hurts you more than it, maybe
Yeah.
not everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's that we're not, well, I mean, I think that there are no guardrails, right? Like these platforms and these social media companies were created with the sole purpose of making people, rich and making them make a lot of money. And that's still the main impetus, right? With all the like, bullshit of, we want to connect people. And, Mark Zuckerberg just wanted to help people, shut up. Like, no, like that's really at this point a hilarious thing to really say, and to still think that people will believe you when you say that. So and yeah, there's been so little, the pace of that, change has been so fast. And I think our government and the regulations and their willingness and ability to regulate it has been so disappointing, that I think we've ended up with a real public health crisis when it comes
Mm.
to these platforms and what it does to our brains and our kids' brains. And like, I think there's some people who are starting to make some pretty bold, demands and ideas. Like I think Jonathan Haidt wrote a piece in the Atlantic a few months ago, and he was just like, there should be no phones in schools. Like, absolutely, like just like take them out, take them out. There's no reason why kids should have phones at school.
My nephew's a mess with this thing.
Yeah, same. I mean, they're
Right.
yeah, and their brains are, we kind of okay. So as much as I like hate being my age at this time in history, because I feel like in my 30s is when I'm like supposed to be like leveling up and like owning a house, or like getting it, like doing all the adult things that I feel like a lot of people our age, it's not within reach in the way that it was for our parents. Like I I do also feel that we were the luckiest generation in the sense that like we still, understand
Out of the
technology. And
line. Yeah.
but yeah, our brains were created before that came in. Like I had email when I was 13, like kind of, but like in the main computer in the main room, like, and with dial up that, would cost so much money that, it was like, you better get off that. Like, check your email and get off. So I do think that we got super lucky, because I can't imagine what it's like to have your brain developing with all of these platforms that are out there, and just with the lack of regulation, or just like there's just no like we're all doing this. I think it makes kind of being a parent feel very terrifying to me. But what about you? What do you do?
To balance the socials?
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know what I do. At times I hire people to do it for me. Um, but here's the problem. I don't trust any of them enough to not
I
look and make
know.
sure they did it
I
right.
know.
Like,
I know.
like I just don't trust them enough. Like, which
Yeah.
is maybe my own problem. Maybe it's just like, yeah, I can tell them, all right, post this exactly at this time. Do this, only write this, and yet somehow something will
Yeah.
inevitably go other than what you said.
Right.
So there's those moments where I hire someone else, but I still feel like I have to engage with it.
Mhm.
There are the moments where, and I'm not saying anything new here, but there are the moments where like I get a message from someone who read a book, this, and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's
Uh,
wild, or
yeah.
and maybe they're even in another country, and you're like, I'm never gonna meet you.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and you're like, that's cool, awesome,
Uh,
glad that happened. But isn't that sort of also, just to play devil's advocate, isn't that ego self-serving? Like
mhm.
me got message about me work, like me is happy, like
I
you know,
know. I
like it's not really
know.
about
I
them
know.
anymore. It's about like
Yeah, yeah,
me
yeah.
did good, like
Yes.
me
No,
is
that's
good writer, me is good
I
maker.
mean, it's true. It's like Bo Burnham, right? Like talks about just constantly like, what do I think? What do I think? What do I look like? What do I think? What do I look? Is that what he says? Like, it's just that and coming back to the Naomi Klein of it is like, yeah, what do I do? What do I think about this? What do I? And it's like, oh my God, that's actually kind of the problem. Um, and you're right. I think it, I mean, we are becoming more narcissistic. It's just, it's, you know, there's data to show that that's, you know, one of the side
Act 3 of
effects
my
sort of.
opera.
What? Oh,
It's
really?
act 3 of my opera is narcissist.
Wow. Do you think you are like have narcissistic tendencies, or like it makes you more narcissistic if you are on social media and stuff like that?
So social media kind of yeah, it actually does come up in the piece. I think everyone is. So I use narcissist, the actual Greek, you know, the mythology,
Yes.
drowns himself in his own image,
Yeah.
um, over and over again. I
Right.
use this idea of we are all drowning ourselves in our own image.
Mhm.
Um, one as a coping mechanism to get through the world. Like, how else do you order from Amazon while the Amazon is burning?
Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
how else do you continue to feed yourself while millions are being starved?
Hmm.
You know, it takes a little bit of self-drowning.
Yeah.
Like, it really does. And and I think social media has made this self-drowning worse. It's
Mm,
kept us in a bubble of self. And
right.
so we think it's a bubble of community, you know, like you said, but it's actually a bubble of self.
Yeah.
And it's seeing self exactly what self wants to see, like it's self-reflecting self.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's so weird because at times it harms self because it makes you feel worse about yourself, and at times it makes stuff like, oh, someone in Guatemala read my book, you know, self good today.
Right.
Um, you know, like, but how do we break from that? You know, I told the
Uh,
person who was running my social media today, and uh I was like, I think we're good. Like, I think I gotta disconnect a little, like,
uh,
you know, for a month or so. And
uh,
um it's a strange thing, you know.
uh,
um Sometimes people give me money to make a video. Like, I also got bills to pay. We're all doing the
yes.
dance.
Totally.
We're doing the
Totally.
dance.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's awareness. I think awareness is a big part of the dance. Like, I always say, ignorance is bliss until you've tasted bliss, then the rest is just ignorance. Like,
Mm.
when you can't take it anymore, you can't take it anymore. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, okay. My phone is, I have 10% left, so we're good. But that's what happens when it goes black. It just tells me you're running out.
Any last questions for me?
I mean, where do you see um like what do you see as the biggest obstacle to liberation?
Honestly, it's self.
Mm-hmm.
It's us. It's the myth of separation.
Mm,
It's, I think I'm different than Liz. I think I'm different than them. I think I'm different. Uh, and that forever caused the most amount of suffering in us
mm,
is our separation.
mm.
Uh, you know, like my Dharma teacher says, you have 7 billion more chances to get happy when you care about others more than you care about yourself.
Yeah.
You have 7 billion more chances to get free if you help someone else get free. You don't
Mm-hmm.
even have to worry about yourself. Like, the more
Yeah.
people you get free, the closer you'll get to it.
Wow. But yeah, like it's not your job
It's not your
in a
job.
way, right?
No. Like, it's just one big sort of circle of mush. We're just blobs, like, doing our best.
Mm.
And we cause a lot of suffering when we think our blob is like a special blob. Like, it's just a blob.
Wait, I love that.
That's it. It's just a bunch of blobs, you know?
That's so nice. That's like takes a lot of pressure off, doesn't it? Because I think that's like the what you're saying, it's I think we're so obsessed with ourselves, because we feel like if we're not, somehow we're gonna lose or right fall behind or somehow not be happy, right? Like that but yeah, it's often kind of what distracts us, what keeps us from achieving all of those things in the first place, so paradoxically.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's self. In this moment, I think it's self, and that might change tomorrow. But
Mhm.
I think I'm talking about. I think solution-based journalism. I think caring about others. I think being able to go march. That moment in time was really nice because a bunch of people cared about themselves, about someone else more than they cared
Mhm.
about themselves.
Yeah.
Like you literally saw that all over the world, and we do not get a lot of
Mm.
witness of that. We
Yeah.
get a witness of that. We don't want people to have a witness of that because it's can be quite powerful. Um,
Mm.
you're right. It was an incredible time. Like it trumps 2005. Like in in the grand scheme. Um,
I hope that something horrible didn't happen in 2005 that I just
someone,
don't remember.
also
Like,
someone like who had a great year in 2005 is like, fuck y'all. Like 2005 slapped. There was a lot of trauma I went through.
okay, if
Um,
2005 was a hard year, I'm really sorry.
yeah.
And again, I was probably complaining just as much as I'm complaining now. Um, but yeah, I just and that's the thing too. We always remember the past more fondly than how it was. It's called the nostalgia bump. It's like a cognitive bias. So that's also, even this moment right now, like we're gonna remember it when we look back on it. Maybe we'll think about it way more fondly than we actually, feel about it now.
I mean, that's pretty much it.
We're 100% sure. Even
And
like
I think
2020, where people are now like, oh, remember 2020? Fuck, I would go back. Like, even though it was like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. If we can look back fondly at March 13th, 2020, we'll be able to do that for this time.
yeah. Well, I'm grateful for this moment.
I'm grateful for this moment too. I'm grateful for you.
Liz, what do you want people to read or listen to or do or check out or anything?
You can subscribe to my Substack, Airplane Mode. That would be so fun, and join our community. My book is called For the Love of Men, Vision for Mindful Masculinity. And then, yeah, I have podcasts. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll get a load of all of the things that I'm up to. But yeah, mostly Substack would be great because I know you have an amazing community. And so anyone who's a fan of yours and a friend of yours is a friend of Airplane Mode and mine.
Thanks, Liz.
Thanks, Chris.
Ciao.